The information provided by Taming Lightning is designed to provide helpful information and to educate on the subjects discussed. The information provided is true and complete to the best of our knowledge and is not intended to be used without professional guidance and supervision. All recommendations are made without guarantee on part of Taming Lightning and affiliates. Taming Lightning and affiliates disclaim any liability in connection with the use of this information. Taming Lightning podcast is supported by the Pittsburgh Glass Center, a non-profit public access glass studio and one of the top glass facilities of its kind in the U.S., with a knowledgeable and friendly staff and a safe, fun atmosphere. Our community is made up of artists, collectors, students, or just those fascinated by glass. Depending on your interests and schedule, there's a class for you, be it a 2-hour introductory workshop, 8-week classes, or 5-day summer intensives taught by artists from all over the world. I like to mention a support option for Taming Lightning, Buy Me a Coffee. With this, your support goes directly to the podcast by means of assisting with audio equipment, billing or hosting, software and services used in processing the audio, and future travel and professional content. You are by no means obligated to donate, but any support, including commenting and sharing, is appreciated. As some of you may know, be it the website, newsletter, or social media, we have a plasma class scheduled at Pittsburgh Glass Center this summer for June 10th through June 14th. Blow and Glow is our second plasma class to be offered at Pittsburgh Glass Center and will be taught by Jaime Guerrero and Ed Kirshner, who have collaborated over the years to combine their skills in furnace glass blowing and dynamic plasma lamps. In this class, we'll be exploring various blown glass forms and plasma effects. An overview of equipment, techniques, gases, and electronics will be discussed and demonstrated. You will be advised on creating blown vessels, helped in processing and filling your glass forms to create your plasma illuminations. Methods and technical considerations for mounting and powering your pieces will be explained for standalone work and for those incorporated into larger sculptures. For this class, we recommend that you have an intermediate skill level for hot shop and furnace glass blowing, which is to have a working knowledge of glass blowing fundamentals with little to no guidance and the ability to work through independent ideas with minimal coaching and demonstration. If you're not sure whether or not you qualify or you may require a little bit more guidance, don't let that stop you, as the instructor Jaime and myself will be available to assist you. No previous experience with neon, plasma, or electronics required, though it will be helpful. Throughout this class, we'll be experimenting with new plasma effects based on unique blown glass forms developed by you and the instructors. As of this moment, we have 3 spots remaining. The early bird rate has increased to $850 as of February 1st and will reach its full price of $900 after April 15th. If you know you would like to take this class, take advantage of the early bird rate. Keep an eye out for more classes at Pittsburgh Glass Center as we work to provide a space for learning neon and plasma. Check us out on the web at www.pittsburghglasscenter.org or call our studio at 412-365-2145. Taming Lightning is affiliated with the Plasma Art Alliance, which formed in 2017 during the exhibition The Art of Plasma at MONA, the Museum of Neon Art. Their mission is to promote illuminated plasma in glass as a sculptural art medium, foster public awareness of the art through exhibitions, conferences, and educational outreach, and support the exchange of information related to the techniques and technologies essential to the advancement of the field. PAA will serve the growing interest in this evolving art for the mutual benefit of artists, enthusiasts, and patrons. You can find them on the web at www.plasmaartalliance.org. Welcome back, or welcome to the Taming Lightning podcast. I'm Percy Eccles II. I'm the creator and host of Taming Lightning, as well as the emerging plasma tech at Pittsburgh Glass Center, where I'm researching and developing a space for exploring plasma and neon light. Taming Lightning podcast is a series of conversations to help expand our understanding of plasma and neon light, looking beyond its associations with novelty in sign making, and to explore the potential of noble gases as an artistic medium, with each guest sharing their unique knowledge and experience. The intro is Boost by Joachim Krud. Joachim is a Swedish artist who loves to create chill and happy music, and does so for copyright-free use. Be sure to support his music by giving credit when used, subscribing, and/or by donation via Patreon. You can find him on Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Hello, Lightning Tamers. This is episode 11. In today's podcast, we have artist and educator Sarah Blood. We couldn't have found a better time to release this podcast than now. As we recently finished up episode 10 talking about the process of plasma, we must consider how we use it as a medium. Sarah talks about her neon origin, her use of light and material, education, and misconceptions of neon.
Hello, my name is Sarah Blood, and that's a good question. I am an artist. I work with light predominantly. I also teach in the Sculpture and Dimensional Studies program at Alfred University, and I run the Neon Studio there.
And how would you describe your art practice?
Ooh, my art practice. I'm really interested in making work that is influenced by response to asked questions about kind of the poetics of life and living, the moments of beauty, moments of pain, and everything in between. I like making one-off pieces of sculpture as opposed to like production wear. I'm not very good at doing the same thing over and over again, which is probably why teaching really suits me well, because every day is different. Mm-hmm. But within my art practice as well, I'm always kind of trying to overreach slightly, ask new questions, try new materials, look at the relationship of materials in a different way to answer these questions. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. I mean, like, the act of teaching is, while it follows a similar guideline, you have to adjust to different students. Therefore, you're going to be interacting different ways, even if it's the same students of a following semester. So.
Oh, yeah. The variables are always different. Yeah. And always changing. And I think it's the same in my practice as well. I follow my nose a lot, and it's like what I'm interested in any given time. And then I'm always learning, I'm always researching, I'm always pushing boundaries. I'm not interested in staying in the same place. I don't know. I have a friend who is very, very good at doing exactly the same thing over and over and over again. And that sounds like my idea of hell. I think being an artist is like the perfect antidote for that. Mm-hmm. There's definitely no standing in the same place, and there's definitely no doing the same thing over and over again.
Now, how did you get started in neon and starting using that as part of your practice?
So I fell in love with neon when I was about 19. No, maybe even younger, actually. I was doing sciences at school because I was interested in kind of forensic science, actually forensic pathology. And I tagged along with some friends to an exhibition in London, and it happened to be a Bruce Nauman retrospective. And I saw the green light corridor piece, which isn't actually neon, it's green fluorescent lights. And it was kind of a religious experience, like the rest of the world fell away, if you know what I mean. And after that experience, I went back to college and changed all of my courses, and I kept up with biology, but then switched to all arts. and then went to art school. And I did glass and ceramics at Sunderland University. Um, and it was really kind of possibly 10 years later that I actually came back and remembered that neon was something that blew me away initially. I'd always liked it on the side. And then I just started to... So around the time that I was doing my master's, I had the opportunity to start doing flame working. And once I was flame working, I realized that this was very close, or potentially very close, to making neon. And so started actively pursuing courses. And of course, at that time, I realized that all of the neon courses in the UK had closed down through lack of demand. And so ended up going to the glass furnace in Istanbul and doing a 2-week class with Michael Caine, not the actor. And then I went to, the following year, I went to Pilchuck Glass School and did, I think it was a 3-week class with David Svensson. And that was pretty much it. It was like, as soon as I had crossed that threshold, if you like, I never really looked back. And neon has been like a central point in my practice ever since. And I think all people who work with glass, I think they're interested in light, whether it's using light within the material, or whether it's the rejection of light, or trying to work with the surface so that light is not part of it. And so I think I've always been kind of thinking about light. But yeah, but then finding neon and actually working with the light as a material, as opposed to like almost like a byproduct. I think it was a very different experience. Yeah. And so I've been working with neon within my work now since 2004, I think, 2004, 2005. Yeah. And it's been quite a scrappy ascent, really, or a scrappy journey, because I did those 2 classes. And then I spent a lot of time in the northeast of England trying to find sympathetic signwriters. So I would find signwriters, and I would take some tubes that I had bent. And I remember my first encounter, I went to one workshop, and all of the guys there were like rubbing their chins going, "Oh, this isn't going to work." It's like, well, yeah, I've made this before somewhere else, and I just want you to do these things for me, so that they could fill the tubes. And then they broke the tube as they were trying to fill it, and then everyone disappeared. And I was just stood there in their workshop on my own. It's like, where did everyone go? And they didn't say sorry, or they didn't ask me to leave. I just kind of stood there for 5 minutes thinking, what just happened? Yeah, so that was my first encounter, finding sympathetic signwriters to fill my work in the Northeast. But eventually I found, through a mutual friend, I found Julia Bickerstaff, who works for Neon Unity in Wakefield in the UK. And she is awesome. She's amazing. She very quickly became like my right-hand woman with regards to helping me make neon, and then just pumping the neon for me, and teaching me to bombard, and she became a good friend as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so it seemed like after you got into neon, as like a drive for it, finding accessible spaces was kind of a difficult journey, but eventually you found someone, which shows the importance of the relationship aspect of, I guess, human existence, but also how that relationship allowed you to build and grow as an artist in this field that can be very secluded or secretive.
Yeah. One of the things that really amazed me So I didn't mention when I introduced myself that I'm obviously English, as you can probably tell from the accent. And I've only been living in the States for 5.5 years now. And when I was learning neon, I was definitely very much in England, where it definitely was a very much cloak and dagger kind of experience. No one wanted to share their secrets at all. And so when I went to the glass furnace and I was working with Michael Caine, what blew me away was the fact that he said, "What do you want to know? I'll tell you everything." And that really surprised me, like the openness and the generosity and the sharing of the information. It was really groundbreaking for me. And then obviously the same happened when I worked with David Svensson the year later. He was like, "Yeah, I can tell you where you can get all of this stuff. I can tell you how you can make it. I can give you all of these hints." And it's just such a polar opposite experience to my experience of trying to find it in the UK. And actually that's one thing that I really like about being in the States, is people tend to be more open and excited and generous. And that could just be circumstantial. That could just be the circles that I found myself moving in. But it's a generosity that I really appreciate. And I definitely couldn't have got where I am now without the generosity of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope and I aim to pass that information on and pass on I don't know, opportunity.
Right. Yeah. In a similar experience, after I took a class with Pat, I came home and just called the first neon shop that I had on the list from the Yellow Pages, and they were really receptive, which is kind of unique because I never expected like any type of resistance, but it felt very similar to the glass art community. There was a similar community of open people that were had a similar humor to the kind of vulgar aspects that we like to joke around with in glass blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I found it really difficult in the northeast of England, being like a young woman in a very male-dominated area. It was really hard to be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was frustrating, and actually, my experience is not unique in the neon world. Having spoken to, like, I'm involved with She Bends. And having spoken to the women who are making neon and being complete badasses within this industry, yeah, we've all had to stand our ground and fight our corners in ways that have sometimes been very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I can imagine. So speaking about She Bends, how did you end up getting involved with many of those artists and makers?
I saw the open call on Facebook. I think right at the beginning when Kim Koga was pulling together interest for an all-woman neon show at the Museum of Neon Art. And I think very early on, she had to step down for various reasons, and Meryl Pataki came on board and became the driving force behind it. And so really I've met the majority of the women that that have now become my community through that process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you have someone who is an artist, a woman in a position for the Museum of Neon Art, which is Mona. And that kind of helped transition and pass on this idea of having an all-women show in which Meryl Pataki had inherited and has been, pioneering for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, she's really taken it and run with it. It's fantastic. And the show in Milwaukee is going to be the third show, and it's all new work as well. So the first two legs, there was the exhibition in the Museum of Neon Art, that then toured to the Midway Gallery in San Francisco, But for this exhibition, we've all submitted brand new work that hasn't been shown before, within She Bends. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the show looks like.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
I've been following for a bit, and a lot of people I share on the Taming Lightning page and whatnot have come from that group. So it's an amazing resource to kind of help advocate for women artists and makers, just to show that they're shining just as much and just as brightly, if not more.
Yeah. I think I think they're doing a really great job, and I think it's a really supportive community, which is really important, because you can't exist in isolation in the art world. It's not advisable to try to, I don't think. I mean, it certainly isn't very conducive for growth. And I think the important thing for art making is the pursuit of growth. Pursuit of growth, yeah. That's hard to do. It's hard to bake a cake without any ingredients.
Right. And then just kind of get back to your work a little bit here, if you don't mind. What problems are you typically solving in your work?
Ooh, I'm really interested in material poetics. So I'm interested in looking at materials that are not necessarily traditionally associated with art making. I'm interested in the tension that you can create when you bring two materials together. I would say that the main problem, or the main questions that I'm tackling, or problems I'm tackling, is trying to look at the work from outside of myself. Because we all have our biases, and we have kind of our own visual language based on our life thus far. But our experience of the world is not the same as everyone else's experience of the world. And so I am conscious to use materials that are meaningful for me, but also that have a universal read that is somehow in line with what I'm trying to say. I want the viewer to be able to understand the work if they spend enough time with it. And obviously not everyone is the audience. And that's fine, and I'm okay with that. But I'm really interested in, I want to make generous artwork. I want to make artwork that people can connect with, or not. But I want the information to be there so that it is accessible if people choose to look for it. And I guess I'm making artwork for me, but I'm also very mindful that other people are going to be experiencing it. And I think that's the main crux of it. It's like looking outside of myself to make sure that I'm not getting carried away in my own head, and that actually the work is grounded in something real that can be real for other people too.
And is that something that you shared to help your students kind of expand on their art making experience?
I try to. Yeah, I try to. We definitely have a conversation about, like one example I use is fur. So if you're using real fur within your work, it says one thing. If you're using fake fur because you either don't want to use real fur or you can't afford real fur, because I'm dealing with students on a budget, it's like fake fur actually says something else. It's not a stand-in. It can't say the same thing as fur. And so we do talk about that, and we talk about the nuance of just very, very slight differences in materials. And we also we talk about how just because something has a very strong connection to them, it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else is going to experience it like that. So I try and get my students to look at what they're making with a more worldwide view, which is difficult when you're 20.
Yeah.
And all your peers have got the same kind of frames of reference. And I think it takes a long time to kind of appreciate that. You can be told it, but it doesn't really mean anything until you're older, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that your first point bringing up, material as like what it is versus material as in the qualities of that material.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't even thought about, because it's something that it's kind of in the back of my mind in terms of, the I guess one could call authenticity of the material, whether it's like the actual thing or a thing that represents it, which becomes more important as someone looks more closely at that piece and gather more information or details.
Yeah, it can really, like, the choice of material really adds to the richness of the work, I think. And I think it's funny because when I was at school, when I was doing my master's, I was definitely actively rejecting truth to material. And it's something that I've really come full circle on. And I think that was possibly a rebellion against the history that I had to take at college. So I didn't get options of what art history I wanted to take. And because it was a 3D design course, at least for my undergrads, I did craft history. We had craft history. So I got to learn a lot about Christopher Dresser and silver teapots and William Morris and the arts and crafts movement and the whole truth to material based around that. And I could not have cared less about any of it. And so it was probably an active rejection of that way of thinking and working at that time. But I now fully appreciate the value. And, we're artists. We're allowed to change our minds, right?
Mm-hmm. It's human. And speaking of which, driving forward on the, the student's perspective, it's difficult to kind of understand, especially as you stated, as a 20-something, your view and their view outside. But the thing is, what's interesting about that mindset is that it's created through the isolation of an education system to some aspect. You kind of go into this factory, then finally you're out in this kind of real world. But then you're getting into college and it's trying to open up the shell that you built around yourself, which is it's just part of the growing aspect. And sometimes people don't get out of that shell. But with that shell, continue on, trying to transition to my next point here, or next question is, what are some misconceptions, especially with neon, that you observed from your students in their thinking process here?
I would say the main frustration is that people don't realize how difficult it is to actually physically make the work. So I've done workshops where people have gone, I want to make a bar sign and I want to make a flamingo. And it's always a case of, okay, well, here's the material, here's how to do some bends, and let's revisit that later. And very quickly people go, oh yeah, maybe like an illuminated squiggle is going to be great. Yeah, but I think definitely with students, there is a misconception that within a semester-long junior class, they will finish the semester being self-sufficient and being able to, leave and set up their own neon studio. And while I share all the information that they would need for that, it's just the skill set. It's really difficult to get to that level of skill where you do feel self-sufficient in that time frame. I think possibly if you're working on it full time, but these students are taking full course loads, and so there's lots of other things. They're juggling lots of different things. That's not to say that students don't make significant improvement during that time, because they really do. And I'm really lucky at Alfred. I have great students. The vast majority of them are super enthusiastic and hardworking. But yeah, I think what is physically achievable within the course is probably the most common misconception. The other one that I've found is that people think they can wing it. So over the past 5 years, I've been trying to set up my syllabus so that there are weekly technical exercises, which will get the students into the shop and working on bends and splices and all of the technical stuff before they get to the designing and making of their finished pieces for critiques. And I'm trying to sell it, or the language that I use is like training for a race. It's like you can't just turn up on race day and run and do well.
Mm-hmm.
You need to put the training in, and the training needs to happen on a very regular basis. Otherwise, you lose the skills, you lose the ability to run that race. And I think you framing it in that way helps to some extent, because I think it's a language that they understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always a work in progress. And of course, every group of students responds differently to different things. And so it's like a constant process of evaluation and adjustment to try and get students, or trying to provide an environment that best supports the students' learning, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do you create active discipline?
Yeah. And also, that they're adults, they're young adults, they can make their own minds up and they can make their own decisions, and you can put everything there for people. And if they choose not to make the most of that, then, that's their choice.
Mm-hmm.
As frustrating as that may be.
But it's also sort of a relief. I was talking to a few people, Monday especially, I talked to him quite a bit, and he was at first very hesitant to tell anyone about the process and how he did it. But I exercised that, knowledge is ultimately useless. It's applied knowledge that has actual power, and it ingrains a new idea of working and a practice and a skill set. So, you're giving them something, but you're not withholding anything. And it's up to them, like you stated, to be able to take that and use it.
Yeah. I think that's the secret. It's applied knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And neon is hard, and it's fickle, and it's a tough mistress to work with.
All right. You got a few minutes here left. I do have one last question. And that is, for this podcast, I try to bring on a lot of different guests, and I try to ask everyone this question in order to help expand in my pool of guests coming on the show. And that is, who would you like to hear on the podcast?
Okay, so the last time we spoke, I said Bruce Nauman, but we established earlier that he never answers the phone. So actually, I would be really interested to hear from someone who doesn't necessarily work with neon, who maybe doesn't make their own neon, who is an artist in other fields, but who does work in neon. For example, Zoe Buckman or Glenn Ligon, and kind of ask them why neon, why is it so important to their practice, and what is it that draws them to it? I'd quite like to get an outsider's perspective, I think. Maybe.
Awesome. Yeah, that's actually been a common request. And I do I am connecting with a couple different people on that, but those names in particular, those are a little. I'll put them on the top of my list here.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that you've taken the time out of your schedule to redo the recording here with me and get us a fine podcast to publish here soon. Where can we find you for seeing your work or on the social medias?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram and I'm Sarah with an H. So I'm Sarah_blood on Instagram. I've also recently updated my website. So sarahblood.com has my most recent work on it now. Yeah, so they're really the two best places to find me.
The outro is The Process by Lakey Inspired. Jordan, aka Lakey, is a Los Angeles-based artist with the goal of inspiring others to create by sharing positive music around the world. Thus, he works hard to produce music every week for copyright-free use. So be sure to support his music by giving credit when used, subscribing, and/or by donation via Patreon. You can find him on Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Spotify.
Thank you for listening to the Taming Lightning podcast. I'd like to thank Sarah Blood for taking the time out of her busy schedule to redo a recording. Our previous attempts at doing a live stream kind of messed things up, but I appreciate her being able to kind of carve out some time, especially in the middle of making new work and getting stuff sent out to an exhibition and figure out her travel plans. And also for offering her insight to use for her use of light and material. Also, I'd like to thank Pittsburgh Glass Center for supporting me as a place of research and inspiration, as well as encouraging me to pursue this project. And the Plasma Art Alliance, where I have an access to a well of knowledge and connects me to some amazing people. Keep an eye out for more classes at Pittsburgh Glass Center as we work to provide a space for learning neon and plasma. You can check us out on the web at www.pittsburghglasscenter.org or call our studio at 412-365-2145. If you'd like to support Taming Lightning, simply go to taminglightning.net and click subscribe. Other options for support are things like donations through Buy Me a Coffee, and the links will be provided on the website. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.